I heard the gunshot before the scream. My sister was at the wedding altar, smiling in her white dress, when HOA Karen burst in wearing a bright red dress, shouting about broken rules. She pulled out a gun and fired. Everyone panicked. My sister fell to her knees, scared and holding her arm. Karen pointed the gun again and yelled, "You can't have a wedding here without HOA permission." I pushed through the crowd, running to my sister. Karen didn't know one thing. The bride she just threatened was the police chief's sister. Before you hear what happened next, tell me where you're watching from. And don't forget to follow for more real HOA stories where justice always wins. I heard the gunshot before I heard the scream, and for a second, I couldn't tell if the sound came from the wedding speakers or from real life. The echo bounced off the tall trees behind the ceremony stage, shaking every guest out of their perfect, peaceful moment. The wedding had been beautiful until then. Soft music, white flowers, sunlight glowing through the leaves, and my sister standing under the arch in her white dress, smiling like the world finally made sense. Everyone had been waiting for this day. My sister had spent months planning every detail, from the petals scattered down the aisle to the string lights ready to glow at sunset. She looked excited, nervous, and happy all at once as she held her husband's hands. People whispered how perfect the moment felt. Then it happened. Karen walked in. She didn't walk. She stormed. HOA Karen, wearing her bright red dress like a warning sign, heels clicking against the stone floor as if she wanted everyone to hear her before they even saw her. Her face was tight with anger, her jaw clenched, and in her hand was a stack of HOA papers she swung around like they were weapons. "You can't do this here," she shouted, interrupting the vows. "This wedding is breaking HOA rules. You never got permission for a gathering this big." Guests turned around in confusion. The couple performing the ceremony froze. Some children held their ears, frightened by how loudly she was yelling. My sister, still holding her bouquet, gave a small, confused smile, thinking maybe Karen was joking. But Karen wasn't the type who joked. She marched straight down the aisle, waving her papers, forcing guests to move aside. "This is not approved. This is not allowed. This is a violation." And before anyone thought to stop her, she pulled out a gun, a real one. She lifted it toward the sky and fired a single shot straight up. The sound cracked through the air like lightning splitting a tree. People dropped to their knees, others ducked behind chairs, and someone screamed. My heart jumped to my throat. Even the birds rushed out of the nearby branches and scattered into the sky. My sister gasped, her legs giving out beneath her as she dropped down to the floor of the altar. She clutched her arm, not because she'd been shot, but because fear had taken over her body so quickly she could barely breathe. Her husband grabbed her shoulders, trying to shield her, whispering, "It's okay. Don't panic. Stay low." Chairs tipped over, plates fell, drinks spilled, and the perfect wedding shattered like glass. Karen pointed the gun again, not firing, just waving it like she owned the moment. "You can't have a wedding here without HOA permission," she screamed, her voice shaking with rage. I didn't think. I didn't wait. I didn't hesitate. I broke through the panicking crowd, pushing past people who were trying to get to safety. My only focus was my sister. My only job was reaching her before something worse happened. My heart pounded like a drum inside my chest. Every step felt too slow. Every second felt too long. My sister's eyes met mine. They were wide, terrified, and begging for help. "Danny," she whispered, shaking, "please." Her wedding veil had slipped off her head, and her bouquet rolled across the floor. She looked so small in that moment, so fragile, like she had been pulled straight out of her own celebration and thrown into a nightmare. Karen kept shouting, pacing back and forth in front of the altar. "This neighborhood has rules. These rules keep everything perfect, but all of you think you can ignore me. Not today." Guests tried to calm her from a distance, but no one dared get close. I finally reached the front row. My hands were raised slowly, trying to keep Karen from turning toward me with the gun. I could feel my pulse in my fingers. "Karen," I said steadily, "put the gun down. This is a wedding." She snapped her head toward me. "I don't care what it is." "It wasn't approved. It wasn't authorized." "It breaks the law. It breaks HOA rules," I said. "Not the law." She glared at me, as if I had insulted the crown on a king's head. "HOA is the law," guests murmured fearfully, some crying quietly, others frozen in place. My sister whimpered softly. The groom kept whispering to her, rubbing her shoulders, trying to calm her breathing, but I could tell she was in shock, and everything inside me burned as I stepped closer. Karen yelled again, "Nobody moves! Nobody continues this wedding! You all think rules don't matter!" I took a slow breath, lowering my voice so only she could hear. "Karen, you have no idea who you just pointed that gun at." She blinked, confused and angry. "What are you talking about?" I kept my eyes locked on her. "The bride is my sister," she scoffed. "So what? That changes nothing." But it did change something big, because she didn't know who I was. She didn't know why people sometimes glanced at me differently. She didn't know what job I went to every morning, or why I walked with a certain confidence. She didn't know she had just threatened a member of my family, and she didn't know she was looking directly at the police chief. I didn't tell her yet. I waited. I stepped closer, my hands steady, my jaw tight, my pulse slowing as the training I'd learned over years in law enforcement finally kicked in. Karen screamed again. "This wedding is canceled." I stared at her, calm, controlled, ready to act. Inside my mind, one thought echoed louder than the gunshot. Karen has no idea what she just started. The moment I stepped closer, the crowd behind me shifted uneasily, whispering, crying, trembling. The once beautiful wedding area now looked like a storm had blown through it. Petals were scattered everywhere, chairs were knocked over, and the soft music meant for the ceremony had been replaced by shaky breaths and frightened murmurs. Karen stood in the center aisle like she was the master of the entire park. She still held the gun pointed upward, waving it whenever she wanted people to be silent. The red dress she'd chosen for her dramatic entrance made her stand out even more, like she wanted the entire world to see her anger. She yelled again, "You people never respect rules. Every time I ask for order, everyone ignores me." "Not today!" Her voice echoed loudly, bouncing off the gazebo walls and making children cry harder. Parents hugged their kids tightly, afraid of what she might do next. A few guests knelt, shielding each other, unsure if she would fire again. My sister sobbed into her husband's shoulder. Her veil lay forgotten on the ground behind her, tangled with rose petals. Her white dress, which was supposed to be the center of her happiest day, now looked like part of a nightmare. Her husband whispered softly, "It's okay. I'm right here. She won't touch you." But even he sounded nervous. I walked forward with both hands held where she could see them. Even though she wasn't aiming the gun at anyone, panic filled the air like smoke from a fire. "Karen," I said, keeping my tone calm, "look around. People are scared. Put the gun down." She turned sharply toward me, her eyes wild. "I don't take orders from you. I don't take orders from anybody. I am the HOA president. Do you know what that means?" "Yes," I answered gently. "It means you manage the neighborhood's rules, not the entire world." She scoffed loudly. "You don't get it. If people ignore the small rules, everything falls apart. Soon they ignore the big ones. That's why I have to make them listen." Guests exchanged terrified looks. Someone whispered behind me, "She has lost her mind." Another said, "Please, someone stop her before she fires again." Karen didn't notice their fear. She was too busy walking up and down the aisle as if she were patrolling her kingdom. The gun in her hand moved with her arm, and every time it tilted, guests flinched. My sister lifted her head slowly, her face blotchy from tears. "Danny, please don't let her ruin everything." "I won't," I said softly. I took another step forward. Karen pointed at me with her free hand. "Stay where you are. I'm warning you. If you take one more step, this wedding ends right now." "It already ended," I replied gently. "You stopped it with that gunshot." Her face twisted with rage. "I only fired into the air. It wasn't dangerous. I just wanted everyone to listen. But no one ever listens." At that moment, Mrs. Green, my sister's childhood neighbor, peeked from behind a fallen chair. "Karen, please," she pleaded. "There are children here. Put the gun down." Karen snapped. "No! Because the moment I stop, they'll think they can ignore the rules again." She pointed toward the wedding arch. "This whole event is illegal. A gathering this big requires HOA approval. There are limits. Limits protect the neighborhood." I continued moving slowly toward the altar. "Karen, this wedding is being held in a public park. The HOA does not control public property." She froze. She looked around as if the world had suddenly shifted underneath her feet. What do you mean? This isn't part of the HOA zone, I explained calmly. You have no authority here. Her eyes widened in disbelief. Of course I do. Everything within the neighborhood line is HOA territory. No, I said. This park was built before the neighborhood. It has its own rules. You can check the city map. People nodded behind me, several whispering, He's right. She doesn't control this place. She made a mistake. Karen's hands shook slightly. She gripped the gun tighter, fear and confusion blending across her face. No, that can't be right. I checked the maps myself. My sister's husband stood slowly, keeping himself between Karen and his bride. You don't need a map to know you've gone too far, he said softly. Karen stomped her foot like a furious child. You all want to ruin the community. You want chaos, no rules, no order, and I'm the only one who actually cares. A few guests exchanged looks of disbelief. Someone behind me whispered, She thinks she's saving us. Another said, She doesn't know she's the problem. Karen raised the gun again, not aiming at anyone but lifting it high. I'm trying to protect this place. I'm trying to protect all of you. And this wedding breaks everything I've worked for. I stepped closer. Her eyes snapped to mine. I told you not to move. I held my ground. I'm moving because someone has to protect my sister from you. Her mouth opened, ready to argue, but the words tangled in her throat. She stared at me, confused, like she was trying to understand why I wasn't afraid of her. Finally, she shouted, Who are you to challenge me? This was the moment I'd been waiting for. I slowly reached for the badge inside my jacket. The crowd went quiet, watching every movement. I held the badge up so the sunlight hit it clearly. The golden emblem reflected across the faces of the guests. Karen stared at it blankly. What is that supposed to mean? I'm the police chief, I said softly but firmly. Gasps filled the park. My sister covered her mouth, overwhelmed. Karen stepped back like she had been pushed. You're lying, she whispered, her voice small for the first time. You can't be. But she knew. Everyone knew. And as I stood there, badge shining, my voice steady, Karen realized something important. She had not just interrupted a wedding. She had not just threatened a bride. She had pointed a gun inside the family of the police chief. And her world was about to change. Karen held the gun high like it was a microphone she used to control the entire wedding. The moment she realized I was the police chief, something changed in her eyes. Shock mixed with anger, fear mixed with stubborn pride. But instead of backing down, she gripped the gun handle tighter, her fingers trembling. The guests were frozen. Some crouched behind chairs, some hid behind flower stands, and others clung to each other silently. Even the wind felt nervous, blowing softly as if afraid to interrupt. My sister sat on the floor of the stage, still holding her husband's arm tightly. Her dress was wrinkled from falling, her makeup smudged from crying, but her eyes were sharp with fear. Danny, please, she whispered again. Don't let her do anything crazy. I stood between Karen and the altar, hands still raised to show I wasn't a threat. Karen, I said slowly, you need to calm down. Everyone is scared. Put the gun down. She shook her head aggressively. No, stop telling me what to do. You think that badge changes something? You think I'm scared of you? You should be scared of what you're doing, I replied softly. You fired a gun at a public event. That alone is serious. Karen looked around with wild eyes, as if searching for someone who would defend her. But no one spoke. She pointed at the guests. You all know I'm right. Nobody ever follows HOA rules. Nobody ever listens. And then they complain when things go wrong. A woman hiding behind an overturned chair whispered to her friend, She thinks she's the mayor. Another man whispered, No, she thinks she's the president of the world. Karen heard none of it. She marched up the aisle toward me, waving her free hand like she was scolding a child. You, she yelled at me. You think you're so perfect because you have a badge? You think rules don't apply to your family? Your sister broke HOA rules. She said each letter slowly and dramatically, as if that made her more powerful. The park is public, I repeated. You don't control it. The wedding is legal. Karen pointed the gun upward again, away from everyone but still terrifying. I don't care about legal. This area is mine. I manage it. I took a slow step toward her. She jerked the gun upward, screaming, Don't move! I said don't move! Everyone gasped. My sister covered her mouth. Kids cried harder. I stayed calm. Karen, listen to me. You're not thinking clearly. You fired one shot already. The next mistake will ruin your whole life. Her lower lip shook. Everyone always blames me. Everyone thinks I'm the problem. When I ask for clean sidewalks, I'm a nag. When I ask for trimmed lawns, I'm controlling. When I ask for quiet hours, I'm a monster. You're not a monster, I said gently. But right now you are scaring innocent people. She blinked rapidly. What else am I supposed to do? If I let one wedding happen without approval, everyone will start ignoring me. The whole neighborhood will turn into chaos. Mrs. Green whispered from behind a fallen table. Karen, the neighborhood isn't a dictatorship. Karen snapped. Yes, it is. Rules keep people safe. My voice deepened. No, Karen, you keep people scared, not safe. She clenched her jaw, glaring at me like I was the villain in her story. I'm not scared of you, she said through gritted teeth. You should be scared of what you've done, I replied. Karen stepped back, confused and shaking, her hand unsteady on the gun. You don't understand what it's like. I'm the only one trying to make this neighborhood perfect. If I stop, everything will fall apart. Nothing is falling apart, I said calmly. You're the one creating chaos by trying to control everything. Her voice cracked. I'm just trying to be respected. Respect doesn't come from fear, I said. You aren't respected. You're avoided. A murmur passed through the guests. They all knew it was true. Karen looked around again, seeing the truth in everyone's faces. She looked smaller, weaker, less sure than she had minutes earlier, but pride still held her tight. She pressed her back against a chair, her hand trembling. You all hate me, she whispered. No, I said gently, we're afraid of you. That's different. She swallowed hard, staring at me as if hearing this for the first time. Her shoulders sank a little, but she still refused to lower the gun. I didn't want to be the enemy, she whispered. Then stop acting like one, I replied. My sister took a shaky breath. Danny, please. I stepped closer again, voice calm, soft, steady, the way I'd spoken to dozens of panicked people in my years as chief. Karen, I said, you threatened a crowd. You ended a wedding. You fired a warning shot. This won't go away. But if you put the gun down now, you're choosing to stop things from getting worse. Her eyes darted between me, the guests, and the gun in her hand. I don't know what to do, she whispered. Put it down, I said. No one will hurt you. But you can't hold that anymore. Her hand shook violently now. This wasn't supposed to happen, she said, voice breaking. I didn't think it would go this far. I just wanted control. You lost control the moment you fired, I said gently. She swallowed again, her chest rising and falling as panic crept into her bones. I slowly extended my hand toward her. Give me the gun, Karen. She stared at the gun like it was suddenly a snake she didn't want to touch. Her breathing grew uneven. She looked exhausted, confused, trapped by her own actions. Her fingers loosened, just a little. Then from behind us came the faint sound of sirens growing louder. Her eyes widened. No, they're coming? They're really coming? Yes, I said. And they're coming to help everyone, including you. Karen trembled harder. I don't want to be arrested, she whispered. You won't be hurt, I said, but you must let go. Her hand opened. The gun slipped from her fingers. It fell into my hand safely, and for the first time since the gunshot, the entire wedding breathed again. My sister sobbed in relief. Guests held each other, trembling but safe. The tension in the air melted slowly. Karen stared at me with a broken, defeated expression, whispering, "What have I done?" I held the gun low and secure, stepping back as the patrol cars pulled in. Everything was about to change. Everything. The moment the gun touched my hand, Karen's entire body seemed to collapse inside itself. Her shoulders slumped, her knees wobbled, and her eyes darted around like she was searching for a way out. But there was none. The wedding guests slowly rose from behind chairs, flower stands, and tables, their breaths shaky but a little steadier now that the danger was gone. The echo of the sirens grew closer. Karen heard it too. Her lips parted in panic. No, they're really coming? For me? I didn't do anything that bad. I didn't hurt anyone. I held the gun securely, keeping it pointed downward and far away from anyone. You fired at a public event. You threatened an entire wedding. That was just to scare them, she yelled, voice cracking. I wasn't trying to injure anyone. I just wanted control. I stepped forward carefully, monitoring her trembling hands and unstable movements. Karen, listen to yourself. You brought a weapon into a wedding. You fired it. You terrified families, children, your own neighbors. Behind me, several guests murmured agreement. Someone whispered, "She could have hurt someone." Another replied softly, "She needs help." Karen shook her head, her red hair swinging wildly. "You're all exaggerating. The gun was pointed up. Up. No one was in danger." My sister, still being held by her husband, found enough strength to speak. "Karen, you ruined my wedding. You ruined everything." "Why?" Karen's expression hardened. "Because you broke rules. Rules are rules. If I let this wedding happen without HOA approval, the whole neighborhood will act like they're above the law." I stepped directly in front of her. "The HOA is not the law." She stared at me, confused again, as if the truth refused to settle in her mind. "It's the law. I have authority. I make decisions. I keep the neighborhood perfect. You keep the neighborhood scared," I corrected. Her mouth twitched. "No. I keep it organized. I keep it clean. I keep it perfect." "Perfect for who?" I asked gently. She didn't answer. Guests watched quietly. Even the children, still clinging to their parents, had gone silent. I finally lifted my badge again so she could see it clearly. "Karen, I am the police chief." She blinked. "You're lying. You're just trying to intimidate me." But the guests nodded. He really is the chief." "You made a mistake, Karen." Shock spread across Karen's face like cold water splashing on hot metal. You're the chief? The chief? Why didn't you tell anyone?" "It's my job," I said. "I don't walk around showing off my title." "But today you pointed a gun at my sister. You fired that gun in front of hundreds of people." "That's not fair," she snapped. "I didn't know she was your sister." "That doesn't matter," I replied. "She's still a person. She's still innocent. Everyone here deserves safety, whether they're related to me or not." Karen stepped backward until her back hit a wooden chair. The red dress she was so proud of now looked like it was swallowing her. Her breathing became uneven. Her hands trembled. Her eyes darted toward the entrance of the park where the flashing lights approached. She whispered, I'm going to get arrested, aren't I?" I didn't have to answer. The look on my face told her everything. The first police cruiser arrived, rolling slowly over the gravel path. The quiet hum of the engine filled the air. The guests stepped aside, creating a clear path. Officers climbed out, taking careful but confident steps. They didn't rush. They didn't shout. They simply assessed. One of them, Officer Molina, looked at me and then at Karen. "Chief," he said. "You okay?" "I'm fine," I said. "The weapon is secured." Karen gasped at the word weapon, as if hearing it for the first time. Officer Molina addressed her calmly. "Ma'am, can you step forward?" Karen shook her head violently. No, I can explain. This is a misunderstanding. They broke HOA rules." "This is a public park," Molina explained. "HOA rules do not apply here." Karen looked around at the guests for support. "They're lying. I know this area is under OA." But Mrs. Green stepped out, holding the park permit in her trembling hands. "We rented this park legally, Karen. You didn't have any authority here." Karen shut her eyes tightly, shaking her head. "This can't be happening. I was trying to help. I just wanted things perfect. Perfect doesn't involve a gun," I said softly. Officer Molina approached her slowly. "Ma'am, we need to speak with you. For now, please place your hands where I can see them." Karen lifted her hands halfway, shaking uncontrollably. "I'm not a criminal. I didn't mean anything bad. No one said you're a criminal," Molina replied. "But you made dangerous choices today." "But," she tried to argue again. "Karen," I said firmly, "stop. It's over." She looked at me with tear-filled eyes, a mix of shame, fear, and disbelief. "Over," she whispered. "I just wanted respect." "Respect doesn't come from fear," I answered. "It comes from kindness, something you forgot." Finally, she lowered her head. Molina gently took her hands. "Ma'am, I'm placing you in temporary detention for investigation." Karen sobbed quietly as the cuffs clicked onto her wrists. The sound echoed, louder than the gunshot had. People let out a breath, relief, exhaustion, and sadness mixing into one long exhale. My sister's husband helped her stand. She walked toward me, shaky but safe, eyes filled with gratitude and tears. "You saved us," she whispered. "You saved me." I hugged her carefully. "You're safe now. That's all that matters." Behind us, the officers guided Karen toward the cruiser. She didn't fight. She didn't shout anymore. She just walked, defeated, scared, and suddenly very quiet. As the police car door closed behind her, the wedding area felt peaceful again, not completely healed, but calmer. The danger was gone, the fear was fading, and justice had begun its work. Karen sat in the back of the police cruiser, her hands cuffed gently in front of her, her red dress wrinkled from the struggle of her own emotions. She looked out through the window with wide, confused eyes, as if the reality of what she had done was only now beginning to settle into her mind. The flashing lights reflected off her face, casting red and blue strokes across her skin. She looked broken, frightened, and lost, not like the loud, powerful woman who had stormed into the wedding minutes earlier. Guests slowly began to step out from their hiding places. Some brushed dust off their clothes, others picked up fallen chairs and helped parents gather frightened children. The entire park felt heavy with the shock of what had happened, but also light with the relief that it was finally over. My sister was still in my arms, trembling gently as she tried to catch her breath. Her husband rubbed her back, whispering soothing words while wiping tears from her cheeks. Her makeup was smudged, her dress wrinkled, but she was safe, and that was all that mattered. "You're all right," I whispered to her. "She can't hurt you, not anymore." She clung to me like she was afraid I might disappear if she loosened her grip. "I thought my wedding was ruined," she said softly. "I thought something terrible was going to happen." "It didn't," I replied, "because you weren't alone." More officers arrived to help control the scene. They moved calmly among the guests, checking if anyone needed medical support or emotional help. Children were given water bottles. A few older guests were seated near the shade with blankets. Officer Molina approached me again. "She's secure, Chief. We'll be transporting her soon. We've collected statements from several witnesses already." I nodded. "Good work. Make sure she's taken calmly. She's unstable, but she's not a danger anymore." He watched me for a moment. "You handled this well, Chief. If you weren't here, I don't want to think how different this could have gone." I let out a slow breath. Neither did I. My sister's best friend, Emma, came rushing forward. She hugged my sister tightly. "Oh my God, I thought we were going to watch your wedding fall apart. I thought something horrible would happen." My sister cried again, but these tears were softer, the kind that come after fear passes. "I just wanted a peaceful wedding," she whispered. "I never imagined this." Guests walked up to us one by one. Some hugged her, some squeezed her hands, some apologized for panicking. Others thanked me for stepping in. Everyone spoke softly, careful not to scare her again. One older man approached me, his voice shaking. "You saved her, Chief. You saved all of us." I shook my head gently. "I just did my job, and my duty as her brother." He patted my shoulder. "Well, we're grateful either way." Soon after, the officers opened the police cruiser door again, not to release Karen, but to check on her condition. She was breathing heavily, staring at the ground instead of looking at anyone. One officer spoke calmly. "Ma'am, we're going to drive you to the station soon. Do you understand?" Karen nodded slowly, her voice barely audible. "I didn't want this. I didn't want any of this." "Then you should have stopped yourself," the officer said softly. Karen sniffed, eyes red from crying. "No one ever listens to the rules. I just wanted people to listen," the officer replied kindly. "People don't listen when they're scared. They listen when they're respected." Karen turned her face away, as if the truth hurt too much to swallow. My sister watched as Karen sat there, no longer yelling, no longer raging, just a small, defeated figure who finally realized she had crossed the line. "Do you think she'll be okay?" my sister asked quietly. "She will," I replied, "but she'll have to answer for what she did first, and maybe she'll learn something." My sister nodded slowly. "I hope so. I never wanted this for her. I just wanted a peaceful day." I placed a hand on her shoulder. "You still can have that. The worst part is over." Wedding staff cautiously walked around the area, picking up decorations, resetting chairs, and checking the altar. Someone brought fresh flowers to replace the ones that had fallen. The musicians whispered softly among themselves, agreeing to start playing again once things felt calm. Emma wiped my sister's tears. "You still look beautiful. Even with all this chaos, you're still the prettiest bride here." My sister smiled weakly, her first real smile since the gunshot. Then a child walked over holding a small bouquet that had been dropped earlier. He handed it to my sister shyly. "Your flowers," he said softly. "I saved them before they got stepped on." She knelt and hugged him gently. "Thank you. That's very sweet." The atmosphere slowly shifted. Fear drained away, replaced by a quiet sense of relief and unity. Guests began helping each other clean and reset the ceremony space. Even the kids, now calmer, began picking petals from the grass and arranging them back into small piles. Officer Molina returned and nodded at me. "We'll take her now, Chief. Want us to keep you updated?" "Yes," I said. "Call me once she's processed." We both looked toward the cruiser. Karen was being helped into the back seat again. She didn't fight, she didn't scream, she didn't argue. She simply sat down, eyes lowered, accepting what came next. The car door closed gently. The engine started. And slowly, the police car drove away, carrying Karen out of the park, out of the wedding, and out of the moment she had destroyed. As the flashing lights faded behind the trees, my sister took a deep breath. "It's really over," she whispered. "Yes," I said. "It is." She looked at her husband, then at me, then at the guests, all of them standing together, waiting for her to stand again. She wiped her tears. "Then, let's finish the wedding." And with that, she walked back toward the altar, not as a scared bride, but as someone who had survived something she never expected to face. The musicians prepared to play. The guests took their seats again. The sunlight returned to the ceremony. The story didn't end with fear, it ended with strength. Final chapter: peace, closure, and a wedding saved. The police cruiser carrying Karen disappeared down the long park road, its lights fading into tiny flashes behind the trees. Only when the sound fully vanished did the wedding guests finally allow themselves to breathe normally again. It was like someone had slowly lifted a huge weight off the entire place. The park, filled with chaos minutes earlier, now settled into a calm, gentle quiet. The sky looked brighter, almost as if the sun itself was relieved the danger had passed. My sister stood at the center of the ceremony space with her husband, her hands shaking slightly, but her posture stronger than before. Her dress, though wrinkled and marked with dust, still glowed white in the sunlight. The flower arch behind her had lost a few petals, but its structure still stood proudly. The decorations were scattered, but the love in the air had not disappeared. She took a deep breath, letting her fear fade a little more with every second. "I thought everything was ruined," she whispered, almost to herself. I stepped closer and placed a steady hand on her shoulder. "Nothing can ruin your day," I said softly. "Not on my watch. Not ever." Her husband looked at me with deep gratitude. "She is lucky to have a brother like you," he said. "Family comes first," I replied. "Always." Some guests nearby nodded, supporting the words. A few even clapped quietly, their hearts still calming after the shock. The moment felt warm again, as if everyone had agreed silently. The wedding wasn't over, it was just delayed. The musicians, still shaken, stepped back toward their instruments. One wiped his forehead, another tuned his violin again. They shared a look of encouragement, as if reminding each other that their job wasn't finished yet. The soft notes of their practice melody drifted into the air, and for the first time all afternoon, the sound felt comforting instead of alarming. The wedding planner, who had been hiding behind a table earlier, emerged with determination. "All right," she said, trying to sound brave. "We fix what we can, we rebuild, we start again." She and her small team worked quickly, lifting chairs back into place, straightening the aisle runner, reshaping bouquets, and lighting candles that had been knocked over. Even guests joined in. A few men helped with the heavy chairs, some women gathered dropped petals and reshaped them into pretty piles, and some kids carried baskets around to help clean up. It was beautiful, not because it was perfect, but because everyone became a family for a moment. My sister watched them with watery eyes. "They're helping. All of them," she whispered. I nodded. They want you to remember the love today, not the fear. She touched her heart. I don't want the memory of Karen to stay with me forever, she said. I want the memory of everyone standing together. You will, I told her. The guests slowly found their seats again, calmer and braver than before. The children sat close to their parents, still holding small snacks or cups of juice given by the officers. Some of the older guests patted their chests, grateful to still be present. A few people were still wiping tears, but they no longer trembled. When everyone was settled, the wedding officiant cleared his throat gently. Shall we begin again? He asked with a hopeful smile. The guests clapped softly. My sister laughed through her tears. Real laughter this time, not fearful, but relieved, grateful, alive. She took her husband's hand again, and together they walked back to the entrance of the aisle. Her dress rustled softly, and the long trail behind her brushed over the newly cleaned path as if wiping away the final traces of panic. Music began, slow, light, romantic. My sister stepped forward, and the crowd rose to their feet, clapping louder than before. Her smile grew wider with each step. She looked at her husband, then at me, then at the guests who had stayed to support her. And in that moment, she looked happier than she had even at the beginning. The officiant lifted the wedding book again. We are gathered here today, again, to celebrate love, unity, and strength. People laughed softly. The tension melted away. You have both shown great courage, he continued. You faced fear and chose love. My sister squeezed her husband's hand, eyes shining. The vows were spoken clearly, braver this time, stronger, filled with new meaning. When they said I do, the crowd erupted into cheers that echoed across the park. Tears rolled down cheeks. People hugged one another. Kids danced. The musicians smiled while playing the final celebratory notes. The wedding was not perfect, but it was unforgettable. After the ceremony ended, guests came to me one by one. Chief, thank you. You protected everyone today. You saved your sister. You kept us safe. We'll never forget this. I nodded each time, though inside I didn't feel like a hero. I felt like a brother. Simply a brother who refused to let fear win. My sister hugged me again, her head resting against my shoulder. I love you, she whispered. Thank you for being here. You never have to thank me, I said. I'll always be there when you need me. As the sun began to set, golden light washed over the park, giving everything a soft, magical glow. My sister and her husband posed for photos, surrounded by guests who were smiling, truly smiling, now that the storm had passed. I looked toward the road where Karen had been taken. She was gone, facing the consequences of her own choices. Maybe one day she'd learn from them. Maybe one day she'd understand that control does not create respect. Kindness does. But for now, she was out of our story. The final photo of the day was taken. My sister, her husband, their family, their friends, and me standing right beside them. And all I could think was, Karen tried to tear apart a wedding, but she didn't know she was facing the police chief. And in the end, love won, fear lost, and justice stood tall.